Dav Chav Gimel Amid Aleph will begin Dav Chav Beis Amid Beis, 6 lines from the bottom. Amar Yomi Shmuel. We were discussing previously that the Inyan of Shaul Melech. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel Mipnei Ma Lo Nimshcha Malchus Beishaul. Why was the kingdom, the monarchy of Shaul, why did it not endure? Because they were too perfect. The yichus was too perfect. There was no flaw in the yichus. Why is that a problem? We don't appoint a leader on the tzibur unless he has a box full of shrotzim that are hanging over his shoulder and back of him, meaning that he has a pagam in the yichus. So therefore, why is that important? Because if it becomes bagayvidik, if it goes to his head, and now he becomes balagayva, we'll tell him, look behind you, turn around and see what's behind you. You think you're better than everybody else, you're so great, look at your yichus. Therefore, in order for the Malchus to endure, it has to be somebody that has that, so that he's not a Balgaiva, because if a Melech, as our leader, is a Balgaiva over the Tzibur, then it can't endure because it's not fitting to be a leader or to be a king. Dovid Melech came from Rus, so therefore there were those who they questioned the actual Yichus, questioned the actual kashrus of Dovid Melech. So therefore, that protected the Malchus-based Dovid from this type of arrogance. Amar Shaul, why was Shaul Melech punished? Because he was meichal on his kavod. He wasn't sufficiently makbid on his kavod. Rashi explains, we know why Shaul was punished because of the chet of Agag, Amalekit. However, he explains that why was he put in a position that he could become nichshel in this and nichshel in this avera. He should have been protected from this situation. Why wasn't he protected from this situation? Because of a different psul that preceded this, a different shortcoming that preceded this. That he was meichel on his kavod, and a king has to uphold the kavod of the monarchy. Shenemar, where do we see this? It says of V'lial Amru Ma Yoshenu Zeh V'yivizu V'lo Yavilu Mincha V'hi Kemacharish. It said at the beginning of his kingdom there were people who said, what can he do? That they ridiculed him. They said, what can he do? He can save us. He's going to be Mashiach, and they disgraced him, and they didn't bring him mincha. But Shaul was quiet, but he remained quiet. He didn't stand up for his honor. And furthermore, it says, and it said, so they came to war. Shaul Melech went out. He was victorious. He conquered them. And the people therefore said that those Anshe Blial, those people who said, those lowly people who said, what will Shaul do? How can Shaul save us? They should be put to death. Shaul Melech said, no, nobody will be killed on this day. So again, he did not uphold his honor, the honor of the Malchus. Can we see from this that called Talmud Chacham, any Talmud Chacham, that doesn't take revenge or bear a grudge like a snake, ain't a Talmud Chacham. It's not considered a real Talmud Chacham. He has to take revenge for a pagam in his kavod. Correct the Gemara, what do you mean? The Torah says that you cannot take revenge, you cannot bear a grudge. The Gemara answers, that's in Mominus. Like we see from the following. The Sanya, Ezo Nikima, what is Nikima, Ezo Natira? Nikima is, for example, Amrloi Hishileni Magalcha. Person says to another, Reuben says to Shimon, he says, lend me your mag, your sickle. Amrloi, love. He says, no, he's not going to lend it. Lemochar amrloihu hashilene kadumcha. So the next day, the second person, meaning Shimon, says to Reuven, lend me your axe. Amrloi eni mashilcha kederach shloi shiltani. So he says, I'm not going to lend it to you, because just like yesterday, you didn't lend me the sickle, I'm not going to lend this axe to you. You didn't lend to me when I wanted to borrow from you, so I'm not going to lend to you. So, Zuhi Nikima, that's taking revenge. That's Nikima. You don't lend to me, I don't give to you. Vezu Nikinatira, what is an example of Natira? And so we'll see, Natira means that he doesn't actually take revenge, but he bears the grudge. How is that? Reuven says to Shimon, lend me your kado, lend me your axe. He said no. The next day, then the second one, Shimon says to Reuven, lend me your garment, your shirt. He says, yes, I'm lying there, take it. He says, you can have it. I'm not like you. I'm not like you. You didn't lend to me. I'm not like you. I'm going to lend it. I'll lend it. Zoe Natira. This is Natira, meaning he doesn't take revenge. He lends it, but he bears the grudge in his heart. So, therefore, we're saying what the Torah is referring to, that leisikim leisita means in a monistic matter, that withholding or not giving the mominus in the way that it should be done. But it's for in terms of a personal matter, which is not involving mominus, then you're supposed to be naikim and naitik kanachas. Correct the Gemara, utzar the gufaloi. Doesn't it apply to personal suffering? It's only to mominus. But Tanya, we learn in the Brayos, people who are insulted, but they don't insult back. They don't answer back. They hear they're disgraced. People disgrace them, but they don't respond. They do the mitzvah. They're over Hashem with Ava, and they are happy even in the suffering that they have. Aleim akasav oyevav, those that love Hashem, kitzeis Hashemesh begurasa, that they will be like the sun shining with all of its might, in its full might. So they will be blessed with that. So you see that it is a maila, and it is the proper thing, even if a person is insulted, not to respond. The Gemara answers, he doesn't respond, but he keeps it in his heart. He keeps the insult and he doesn't forget it. And if other people want to avenge his insult, if other people want to punish this person for the insult that he did, he allows them to do it. Now, in the case of Shaul Melech, he stopped the people from taking revenge against those who insulted him. More, but still, Rava says, if a person is maver al midaisav, that he bends over backwards, he relinquishes the midah of nekama. He let it pass over. He doesn't take revenge. Ma'avir loy al kol pshav. Then mishamayim, they'll be ma'avir all his chatoim. They will pass over all of his chatoim. They'll forgive all of his chatoim. So you see that it is the proper thing to be ma'avir midaisav. The more answers to mefayislo or mefayis. What's referring to is in a case where they're mefayis him, they apologize to him, then he should forgive it and not take revenge. So, if it's on a monetary item, whether the person apologizes or not, you can't take revenge. If it's a personal item, if it's a personal matter, then we say that if the person apologized, then you should accept the apology. If he didn't didn't apologize, then you yourself should not take nakama, but you should allow others to do it on your behalf. So therefore you should keep it in your heart, and therefore remembering and allowing other ones to punish on your behalf, to take revenge on your behalf. That seems to be the maskana, the Meforshim asked the kasha. It seems to be from other places in Masechus Megillah, Megillah Shabbos, that a person should forgive and forget unconditionally. The Ritva answers that there's a chilek between if it's kavod shamayim, if it's var mitzvah or kavod Torah, or a personal matter. For a personal matter, it should be forgotten, completely forgotten, and he should not take the kama and forget it completely. If it's to do with a mitzvah, it's a var mitzvah, then he should keep it in his heart. It's much from the Rambam. There's a chilek if it's in private or in public. In private, he should forget about it, even if there's no apology. But in public, then he should allow others to take revenge on his behalf, as was the case by Shaul HaMelech. Continuing now with the union of the Gorel, that they had a Gorel in the base of Mikdash, so they put out their fingers, and the Mamuna, the one who was in charge, he had a number, and they put out their fingers, and he counted, and wherever the number ended on the finger that the number ended, he was the one that was Zeich for the Gorel. They put out one or two fingers. Might seem, if you tell me that you can put out even two fingers, do you have to tell me that you can put out one? Certainly you can put out one, if you can even put out two. There's a difference if it's a healthy kain or a sick one. A healthy kain puts out one finger, he doesn't put out two. But one who is sick, that he needs the other finger to support, to hold up his finger, his hands shake or whatever, and he's weak, he's not strong, then he can put out two. So kan b'vori, kan b'chayla. As we certainly learned in the Brisa, we learned in the Brisa, achas moitzim, shtayin ein moitzim. You only put out one, but not two. That's only if he's healthy. If he's not, if he's weak, if he's sick, afilu shtayin moitzim, then you can put out even two. By Yechidim, and in a different case, the ones who are Yechidim, they're not amongst the group. Meaning, so if you put out two fingers, it has the appearance of that there's two different Kohanim, that there's two Kohanim, so it's counted twice. But of Yechidim, then it's clear that they're only one person there. It won't be counted as two people, so it won't be counted as an extra person. The Yechidim, it seems times they could put out two fingers, but in any event, they're only counted as one. Is it true that we only count it as one finger? We learn the Brisa, we don't put out a middle finger or a thumb because of the Ramoyim. So really, that's any two fingers we don't count, as we saw before. These are what commonly put out. We don't put out any two fingers. We only put out one finger. But it says that we don't put out these two fingers because of the cheese. But if he does put out a middle finger, we do count it. But if he puts out a thumb, we don't count it. And not only that, if he does put out a thumb, he gets malchus from the one who is appointed. So you see, though, however, that if he puts out the shalish, the middle finger, it is counted. So apparently we do count it as two if he does put it out. Mar says, no, it means it's only counted as one. It's only counted as one. You don't put out these fingers. If he puts out two fingers, it's only counted as one. If he puts out a thumb, then he gets even malchus, because there's a chashash of ramois that it'll be cheating if he puts out the thumb. How is that? Because if the kohen sees that the number is going to end with the kohen after him, he can spread apart his thumb and his finger and his index finger far apart to make it look like they're two separate kohanim. As the Tzitz Yontif explains, the Kohanim were close together, were in a circle very tight together. So therefore, if he spreads it out very far, it could be counted as two separate Kohanim. If he sees that the number is going to end with a Kohen after him, if he stretches it out like this, it'll be counted as two, and it'll end up with him, and he'll be Zeicha. So therefore, there's a Ramois factor with the thumb. If he does put out the thumb, he gets in Malchus, he gets the Mamuna, gives him marks with a pekia. My pekia, Rav Madra. He said it's a Madra. My Madra, what's a Madra? Papa Ma'atraka Detaya. It means the whip of the merchants, the Arab merchants. The posegration, the tip of it is split. And so that is split into strands. So he gets malchus with that type of a whip. Amar Rabbi says, initially I used to think, I understand that we learned Masechet Shkolim, Ben Bevoim Amun Ala Pekia. He was the one that was in charge of the Pekia, Amina, and I thought, what is Pekia? I meant to say, Psil also, it means in charge of the wicks of the Menorah. Kindusnan, like we see that this language is used. It says, it says from the worn out pants of the Kohanim and from their belts, Mehem Hayu Mafkiyim, they would tear strips. They would tear strips from it of the cloth. Ubehem Hayu Madlikin, and with that, those strips, they used to light the candle, the Menorah. They used it wicks for the Menorah. So therefore, he thought that this was a lashon of Mafkiyin, of Pekia, that's what it's referring to, the wicks. But when I heard this brisa, my pekia nagda, I thought that what's a pekia? It's a whip. It should be interpreted as a whip. There was a Maisa that the two Kohanim were running up the ramp, and one pushed the other one, and the one that was pushed, he broke his leg. Tan Rabbanan, we have a different Maisa. We learned in a Brisa Maisa b'shnei Kahanim. There was a Maisa two Kahanim shayu shneim shavim. They were running up, and it was a tie. They're running up the ramp, but one of them came in within the four amas. The way it's a mashma from we'll see that it's mashma from the Gemara, but it's clear from the Yerushalmi. It means that one of them won the race. He came within four amas. The Lashon Yerushalmi is of the Mizbeach, not Chaver, but the Mizbeach. So one of them won. So the second one took a knife and he stabbed them in the heart. The one who lost the race took his knife and he stabbed the one who won. He stabbed him in his heart. Rabbi Tzadok stood on the miles on the steps of Ulam. Rashi explained this is not the Ulam that was before the Heichal. This is the Ulam. This was a hall that was built in the Har HaBayis. And he said, Achenu Beis Yisrael Shim. He said, the pasuk says that. It says in the pasuk, Harei Yomer ki Matzeh Chala B'Adama v'Yatzeh Zekenecha Sheftecha. So he said, Achenu Beis Yisrael, listen. It says to what it says in the pasuk. It says that if there's a dead body that's found, it's found, and we don't know who the killer is, and it says then it's a din of Egla Arufa. There's a Canaan come out, and they measure which is the closest city, and the one that's closest has to bring the Egla Arufa, which is decapitated in the Nahal. It says, in this case over here, who is responsible in this case to bring the Egla Arufa? Al-Ir or Al-Ha'azores? Is it the responsibility of the people who live in the city of Yerushalayim or on the Kohanim and the Azores? So the way Tais explains this is not really halacha shaila, it's not Maisa, it's only to move the people, to bring them to crying the tears about this terrible tragedy. People started burst out and crying. The father of this young Kohen came and saw and he saw that his son wasn't dead yet. He was mefarfer. He was struggling and writhing on the floor. Amar Harei Hu Kaparoschem. He said, this is a kapara for you. This over here is a kapara. His misa will be a kapara for this terrible affair. And Vadaim bini mefarfer v'loinit masakin. And he said his son is still mefarfer and he's not dead yet, and therefore there is no tumah. The sakin did not become tumah, so there's no tumah. It hasn't brought about the tumah. So that was a consolation that there was no tumah. It teaches you shekasha leim taharas kelim yisam mishichos damim. The Kohanim were so makpid on the Torah that there should not be tumah on any of the kelim, the klisharis. So you see that it was even more than the shvichas damim, even more than the killing. It says by Menashe, the Rasha, that he shed so much blood, he filled Yerushalayim from one end to the other end with bloodshed. So you see over here that there was so much bloodshed that and this continued on, the Gemara's learning, the Ritva says, this continued on into the second base of Mikdash, that they became insensitive to to the Shichas Domim, because, as we see, it was filled from Yerushalayim from one end to the other. So the Tahara and the Tumah of the Kalim was even more chomer to them than bloodshed. So we have two mises where there was a calamity, where there was a tragedy involved in the race that they were running up to Kevesh to see who would win. So Hai Maisa Khan, which Maisa was first? Which Maisa is this Maisa of the killing, or where the Kayan was pushed and he broke his leg? So Elim, the Shichas Domim, if you say the one with the Shichas Domim of the killing, Hashta Shichas Domim, Leitakina Payasa, if for Shichas Domim they weren't Masakin a pious, they let them continue racing and doing this race on Ishbar Ragla Takino for the breaking of the leg, would that have motivated them to be Masakin, to the pious, to abolish the race and Masakin a pious? Ella the Ishbar Ragla. Eli must say that the first was the breaking of the leg. So if that's the case, if it came into the kin of piasa, but once they instituted already a pious after that, Arba Amas Mayavidatayu, why was there a race that led to the second killing? More says, therefore we must say, Eloilam the Shichas Domkan. Really, it was the Shichas Domim that was first. And they didn't abolish the race at that point, even though there was that tragedy. Because they thought this is something that is an unusual case. It's a random case. It's not something that would occur again. Therefore, they did not, after that point, abolish the race. But came in the chaza, but once they saw that it became more regular, that it happened now a second time, and there was this pushing and there was a breaking of the leg, that the Kohanim, that they took this race and they took it to the extreme, and therefore, as we see, and we saw in our Mishnah, then they abolished it after the breaking of the leg, the kin Rabbana Payas, the Messiah of the Payas, because they saw that it was leading to, on a regular basis, leading to danger, and they abolished the race, and their Messiah and the Payas, the Gairo.